In this video, I'll explain hybrid linked mode. Hybrid linked mode can be used to create an association with vCenter instances. So for example, here on the left-hand side, we see our customer premise, right? That's the physical data center. And within that physical data center, we have a vCenter server. And then on the right side, we see the VMware Cloud on AWS. And we've got our management gateway, right, which is essentially an NSX edge that provides connectivity to the management network of our VMware Cloud on AWS software-defined data center. And utilizing that management gateway, we can connect up to the vCenter server there, and we can create a relationship between the two called hybrid linked mode. And this allows us to log into either vCenter server and manage the inventory of both locations. So here's my user logging in. That user is able to manage the inventory of not only the vCenter inventory of the on-premise equipment, but also the VMware Cloud on AWS inventory as well. And then we can see here we've got Active Directory. So in order to enable this, we're going to have a shared repository of users. So really the first step towards making this happen is to create a VPN or a direct connect via AWS to our VMware Cloud on AWS software-defined data center and allow it access to this username and password repository. In this case, we're talking Active Directory. So that has to be available as well. And then once we've got it all set up, we can actually do things like cold migrate a VM from one environment to the other. So notice at the bottom, we've got this little VM and it's red. Right? The VM is currently powered on. I can power off that VM, right-click it, and choose Migrate, and move it to the inventory on my VMware Cloud on AWS, where I can power it back on. So hybrid linked mode makes that possible. In order to enable hybrid linked mode, we need to be at vSphere 6.5 patch D or later. And we have to be using a vCenter with an embedded platform services controller. It's not supported with vCenter if you have an external platform services controller. It must be an embedded PSC. So let's walk through the steps required to configure hybrid linked mode. First thing we need is an identity source. Right? This can be a repository of user credentials. Most commonly, we're going to be talking about Active Directory, although LDAP is an option as well. First things first, you have to have a connection. Right? So it's either going to be Direct Connect or VPN, or maybe even Direct Connect with a VPN on top of it. Right? And for those of you who are less familiar with AWS, Direct Connect is an actual physical connection from your customer premise into an AWS data center. Right? So if you need really reliable bandwidth and really reliable performance and you want a dedicated physical connection, that's what Direct Connect is. Or we can just do a VPN. And by establishing that VPN or that direct connection, the identity source is going to be accessible to both environments. We may need to do some changes in DNS and make sure that everything is able to resolve properly. But once that identity source is accessible to both locations, we've opened up all the necessary firewall ports. We've created all of the DNS entries required. Then kind of step one, we're almost complete with step one. Now, you'll notice here it says see docs. There's documentation walking you through how to open these firewall ports and create the required DNS entries. So if you visit www.trainertests.com/cloud, you'll find all of the documentation you need to make this happen. And then finally, you can just add the identity source to the vCenter server that is in the VMware Cloud on AWS software-defined data center. Right, so now our on-premise vCenter and our vCenter in the cloud have a common identity source. It can be Active Directory as an LDAP server for Windows, Active Directory server, or Open LDAP. Any of those identity source types are supported. Then we have step 2 and 3. Step 2, create a cloud administrator group. So now you'll choose some users from your identity source that you're going to grant full cloud admin rights to on our software-defined data center in the cloud. Then we'll go ahead and we'll link to an on-premise SSO domain. This allows our single sign-on domain to be shared across our on-premise vCenter and our cloud vCenter. You'll point to the on-premise platform services control, rephrase. You will point the SDDC vCenter to an on-premise platform services controller and single sign-on domain. And again, if you want more details on any of this, go check out the documentation, which you can find a link to at www.trainertest.com/cloud.